Today, I'm speaking with NanaYaa Mensah-Thomas. NanaYaa is a healthcare strategist, innovation leader, founder of Purelite Ventures, where she invests at the frontier of biotech, healthcare, AI, and software as medical device. And NanaYaa spent over 2 decades as a research and clinical laboratory scientist and quality control leader at Memorial Sloan-Kettering Cancer Center, one of the world's most respected cancer research institutions in the world. Then she completed her MBA at Columbia Business School, and what began as an interest in venture capital became a conviction that the gap between what science can do and what capital flows toward is one of the most consequential problems in healthcare. She founded Purelite Ventures and directs Project 2.8's Female Founder Accelerator at Columbia Business School. So what I'm interested in today isn't the investment thesis, it's what it actually costs to make a crossing like that. From 20 years of clinical identity into building something entirely new, what you carried forward, what you had to set down, and what it feels like at the lead, to lead at the frontier of a category that keeps redefining itself. And that's kind of what in the inquiry is built for, NanaYaa. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Very kind introduction. I, from the bottom of my heart, you've been able to encapsulate what I do and a lot of what makes me tick. Project 2.8 is from the Columbia Venture community, part of the Columbia Alumni Association. So yes, thank you for mentioning that as well. It's one of the labors of love that I am involved in.
Yeah, it's a,
Well,
it's a great program.
thank
So
you.
before the first question, it's kind of the same format as always. I ask, you talk, no right answers, and take whatever time you need. So you ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready.
Excellent. Okay, so the first question I have for you, you spent over 20 years at Memorial Sloan-Kettering. You were building very deep clinical expertise, institutional belonging, and a very specific kind of identity. Then you went to Columbia Business School and made a decision to build something entirely different. So I want to start there, not with what Purelite Ventures is, but with what the decision actually felt like. What was happening inside you when you made that crossing?
Yes, yes. So, as a research scientist and as a clinical scientist, especially working um, with patients' information and patient sampling to decide whether they have disease or they don't have disease, I realized that what we were doing there was highly important. Somebody has been saying this, I forget the person, but it said if you don't have the correct diagnosis, you are most likely going to have the wrong treatment plan. And so, very early on, I realized how important it was. And so the time that I would spend working on it, on all of the experiments that we do, and we call them experiments, but they're really diagnostics, really made me see the patient journey in a really profound way. Because if you can imagine a patient who goes to their primary care physician and they have like a lump somewhere or they're not feeling well, and their doctor sends them for testing at Memorial Sloan-Kettering, you can imagine the fear that they may feel when they're going into that situation, especially if they've never had that situation before, or even if they have had that situation before and they thought they were out of the woods. So the seriousness of what I was doing there didn't evade me. I was very much aware of it. And I wanted to add more, as much as I could, to the treatment plans and the ability of each patient to get well. Because, I've been treated for various illnesses myself. I've been in the healthcare system as a patient and as a provider. And one of the funny things one of my doctors said to me, I said, "Well, I'm getting well. Thank you." She said, "You're the one doing it." And I laughed. I'm like, "I don't know if I'm doing it. I'm taking the medication." She's like, "No, your body is healing.
Mhm.
She's like, I'm not in. So we are there to help somebody's healing journey.
Mhm.
Believe that God has given them that ability to heal already. And we're just supporting them
Mhm.
and helping them to see it. So that was where I was at Memorial. And I still stay in that space. I still
Mhm.
believe in that space. And I actually still work as a judge for venture capital startups at Memorial Sloan-Kettering. So I've never really left the building per se. I'm still
Yeah.
kind of in the building. And I'm really, really thankful.
Yeah, I was gonna, one of the follow-up questions I was had, was the decision to leave Sloan Kettering a clear decision or a heavy one? Was there a moment you knew, or did the knowing arrive slowly?
It arrived, and then I took my time listening to the call, if that makes sense. And I think one of the things is that within the healthcare field, there are certain fields, like for instance, if I would talk about the director that I served under, there aren't that many people with her knowledge and her know-how, right?
Hmm.
And so it's very unique. Her situation is very unique because it's really hard to find somebody like her, right? And so in my department, I think that happens quite often where you find because there often aren't as many healthcare professionals as we do need in the system, that whatever we do is considered quite valuable in the space. And it's valuable because of the people that we touch. That's the only reason why something is valuable, in my opinion. If I mean, there's if you're if you're helping somebody. Um, so that wasn't my job. I was not the director, right? But just to put a little bit of color onto the situation, um, I'd been working there for over 20 years. I have put a lot into everything that I have done. Stayed at work until midnight some nights just to make sure things were correct for a patient. Um, and I had come to see it as a home, a place of work, and as a home. And I had also come to see it as a place where I had very dear friends.
Hmm.
And so leaving, I almost felt like, people talk about the golden handcuffs.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like I was handcuffed, but by definition, it sort of was that. You're making, and you're also earning a very good living where you don't really want for anything. But if you decide to go into your own business, that changes, right? You have to bootstrap, you have to use the money you've saved, you have to get investors to join you in your vision. And so it becomes this thing where it's not that the decision hasn't been made, but it's like dipping your foot into this really cold water and
Hmm.
then saying you're going to take the plunge
Yeah.
and really like deciding, am I going to do it? Do I believe in myself enough to do it? Am I the right person to do it? Asking all these questions and then saying, if I just stay here,
Right.
I'll be just fine.
Yeah.
And I will, and people will respect my decision to stay here. Nobody will say that I was a bad person for staying, right? Like nobody's going to say, well, maybe some people don't like the healthcare system. So
Hmm.
it's, but for the most part in my circles, nobody would think there'd be no second thought about why I stayed,
Right.
you know?
So you had 20 years in clinical science,
Mhm.
building, very specific kind of decision-making discipline.
Yeah.
It's evidence-based, it's
Yeah.
peer-reviewed, methodical.
Yeah.
When you moved into venture capital and startup advising, where that discipline is completely inverted, faster, more ambiguous,
Yeah.
often running ahead of the evidence. What did that do to how you trusted your own judgment?
Wow. What a interesting question. So I will take a little bit of a step back in my VC career. So I was offered um, a position to be a co-GP in an agnostic firm.
Mhm.
And I started to do it, Terry. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see some healthcare deals, and I can also like invest in companies like Uber and all these different big name companies that are being have already been built, but there are those companies that are building themselves up right now. I can be part of. And then during that time, I actually got an illness that I had to go to the hospital for. Um, and I was in the hospital, and I just thought about it. I was like, it's like a Paul on the road to Damascus moment where you're sort of like, okay, the scales are taken off my eyes. Why did God give me the opportunity to work in healthcare for 20 years and me not actually use the skills that you just mentioned
Mhm.
in supporting companies that can save lives? Because the funny thing is some of the things that I had helped to research, they used on me in the hospital. And, you know, there's so many different ways that um, research can help a person. So I said to myself, okay, I don't think agnostic venture capital is for me based on my the opportunities that I have had and my love for science. And you talked about the mindset that I had to carry at Memorial. And I had the man who hired me, Dr. Hedvat, who's a person that I tried to model my own leadership after.
Mhm.
He's a wonderful, he was our director at Memorial when I was hired for diagnostic molecular pathology. One day I went to his office, Terry, and after I had done some experiments, I said to him, I feel like this is this and this. And he looked at me like I was crazy, Terry. And I paused for a second and I said, my findings from my experiments have shown that this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. And finally he relaxed, right? And he was like, okay, all right. She understands the mission, that this is not about her feelings. This is about the evidence, right? Which is what you alluded to in the way to think. So I have not thrown that out. With healthcare venture capital, that's the skill that is most important in due diligence, to really look at it, to be able to say, this is ideation. This founder is thinking about a problem. Maybe the problem, and one of the best things about healthcare, and maybe all different types of venture capital or venture capital startups, is people experience a problem or they find that problem in their own family lives
Mhm.
or friend circles, and it hurts them enough to build. So they have this ideation. Can I invest in ideation? No, that would be like feeling. Like I just feel like that's a good idea, right? But then next comes proof of concept. And then that becomes something that I can build off of. What does that mean? That means that they have done some in vitro studies that make sense based on the research of giants that they're standing on the shoulders of and their own research, you
Mhm.
know, um, then based on the next step, whether they're going in for an FDA approval, what does that mean? Whether they're working with different organizations that can help them establish POC or proof of concept, right? So all of this stuff, especially because this is in my stage, early stage investing, even though it's early, it's different than some of the other types of investing where it's like, I feel that this is going to be great. I do have those feelings that something is going to be great. I do get enthusiastic, but I can never let my enthusiasm take over the due diligence that I have to do.
Right.
So I've never quite left that. And I don't know if that was too wordy for saying that, but
No,
that's
I mean, that perfectly answered the question. So just following up on that. So Purelite Ventures, it focuses on seed stage investments in biotech, healthcare, AI, and software as medical device. So these are categories where science is ahead of what the market can evaluate
yeah,
fairly, right? So
yes.
how do you make investment decisions in a space where the signal is genuinely hard to separate from the noise, where most of the conventional
Hmm.
VC pattern matching doesn't apply.
Yeah, that's a great question. And even today, I was on a call and somebody asked me, so what trends am I looking at? And I nowadays I laugh. When I was early in my career, I would try and figure out a trend. Like what trend am I really interested in? But now at this stage, I look at the problem
Hmm.
that they're solving. That's the real, that's the real important thing, the problem. And are there people who need this problem solved and are willing to go after that solution?
Hmm.
Are there people willing to do a clinical trial because this problem hasn't been solved?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
people are, yeah, because people are putting their lives on the line to be in clinical trials to save their lives. They don't know,
Yeah.
they know that the research has been done, but they don't know if it's going to work on them or going to work on humans. And so it's the kind of thing where no, I'm not trendy. I can wear the same black dress that my great grandmother wore and be very comfortable in it,
Yeah.
as long as it does what it's supposed to do.
Right. So the venture capital world has its own very strong definition of what a successful investor looks like.
Yeah.
The pattern, the portfolio, the brand. So how much of that external definition are you operating from in building Purelite, and how much of it have you had to set aside to see clearly what this firm actually needs to be?
You know, I think that's a great question because as a VC, I straddle between LP satisfaction and also, which means returns. And then also on top of that, um, impact in innovation. And for me, the best investors, the best LPs understand the impact that healthcare has on the daily lives of the people that we know or even we don't know. Because I also believe that some of the kindness that we show to people
Hmm.
should also be impersonal in many ways. Like we can, like somebody who builds a library, for instance, they don't know all the people who are going to walk in those doors and all the people who are going to take books out or all the people who are even going to come into the library so they can get out of the heat. They
Hmm.
don't know like how they're help, like who they're going to help. They don't know what innovations are going to come out of somebody sitting for hours in um in one of the sections, but they help them impersonally and they understand the impact that that has on the world in general.
Hmm.
Um, so I like to look at what I do at Purelite Ventures partially that way.
Hmm.
There are certain things and certain disease states that I've seen in my own friends and family groups, myself included. And we live in a fallen world. Everybody has something, right? Um, Unfortunately, but I don't know, but I like to look at it in terms of helping the general population.
All right. So when you make an investment
Yeah.
thesis,
Yes.
a conviction about where a company should go and why,
Yeah.
what happens when that thesis meets the reality of working with founders? Does it arrive intact, or does something shift in the translation?
Hmm. Can you repeat the first part of that question?
Yeah, when you're making an investment thesis,
Mhm.
you know, where or a company should go and why. What happens when that thesis meets reality of working with the founder?
I get it. I get it. Um, so we try to be very careful about who initially we look to invest in. So our thesis, like in our intake form, we do have to turn down people who don't meet our thesis very early on. So we don't often come into a situation where the founder is far outside of our thesis at all. They're usually very aligned because we make sure that they are aligned. Um, if they are not aligned, I have VCs that I know that I work with who have vertical interests that may help them so I can, introduce them. But that's the first step. So the cost of admission is that you are on Purelite Ventures thesis. The next thing that we do is we are very, very careful with our due diligence. So we look at it, of course, we've been talking about the problem a lot, and we've talked a little bit about the solution and how the solution, we would like to see a solution that causes the patient as little pain and their caregivers as little pain to administer alongside with the healthcare professionals that work with them. Right. So that's one of the biggest things that we're looking at, because we're looking at how do we get them healthy as quickly and as safely as possible? And how do we help their, like, it's interesting. Like I was talking with my brother and he said, being part of the sandwich generation is crazy. And I was like, what do you mean? And children, yourself, and then aging parents. How do you manage all those things as a caregiver? So that's another thing that we look at very particularly, because we know that the health of a patient, sometimes their surroundings are very important. If they have very supportive people who have the right things to help them, then they flourish. And then their families can get back to doing the things they like to do. The next thing, when founders and thesis collide, that we look at are really good pharmaceuticals. I love a good pharmaceutical, and people can say all sorts of things about them. But when there is a situation where there's an acute need, patients need to be taken care of. If they need epinephrine or they need something, like that has to be administered. One can say it doesn't have to be, but I would say that holistic care is welcome. I love holistic care, but that's when a person has time to actually do it and the opportunity to do it. Not always when, like, if there's something holistic that can take a person from point A to point B and avoid them dying at a certain point, then hey, I'm all in. Yeah. But if it's a pharmaceutical that can do that, I'm all in, because I'd rather see them have a pharmaceutical that saves their lives than to say that they just don't want to touch this medicine.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So you direct Project 2.8, female founder accelerator at Columbia. I'm particularly interested in that because of, many of my colleagues are women who are approaching it from sort of a different angle, but you direct that Project 2.8. So you're working with founders who are at the very beginning of the crossing.
Yeah.
Making some of the decisions you made. So what do you see them getting wrong most consistently, and what does that tell you about your own journey?
So I would like to say, so Project 2.8 is a wonderful organization, started by the CVC. And, it was ideated by Shashi Srinivasan during COVID, because she realized that 2.8% of funding for women-only founded companies was gotten through venture capital. So it's really less than 3% at that time. At this point, I think it's gone down below 2%, right? So it's not even 2% at this point. And I started working with Project 2.8 last year. So my first cohort was last year, cohort 5, and we're on to our second cohort. And I think the most important thing, and I don't know if all of the founders feel this way, but for me, the most important thing is their mindset. So I wouldn't say that they are making the mistakes, because people sort of self-select. It's very interesting when I remember watching a movie, and I can't remember the movie. My husband plays all these movies with all these action people, and I'm like walking in and out of the room, and so I heard this guy, and somebody said, how did you choose these people to work with you at the FBI? And you know what he said? We don't choose them. They self-select for the most part. Like they apply. We don't go and look for people who want to do this kind of work or believe in themselves enough to do this kind of work.
Right.
And so I find that a lot of the people who I meet, the founders I meet, they are self-selecting privately in their minds,
Mm-hmm.
but then they also have to reconcile with the realities of some of the statistics and some of the reactions of other people.
Mm.
And so I think one of the things that I would like to turn on its head is, okay, your mental process that led you to be to make a commitment, let that be the same way that you think when you're in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that change.
Yeah.
And so I think we can give them, we give them literally all of this information on what venture capitalists are looking for, um, how we do diligence, what we look at when we see a team. We give them all the information. We talk to them about their taxes. We talk to them about their building of their data rooms. We give them all this like technical information. But the thing that can't be purchased or or just the thing that can't be purchased, I'll just leave it that way,
Mm-hmm.
is actually believing in yourself in a way that when you meet an obstacle, you still believe in yourself.
Yep.
For me, private personally, and this is not something that everybody at Project 2.8 believes in because everybody comes from different traditions and we don't have anything we allow everybody from any tradition to be part of Project 2.8. But for me, it's my Christian faith that helps me to navigate that, right? Because it says in Proverbs, it says, I praise the Lord because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, for I know full well how wonderful your works are. And there's another scripture that says, God is no respecter of persons. And so the only thing that I say over and over to myself is that, hey, God, when God made me and when God made these women, when God made you, when God made anybody here, there's a purpose behind it and there's an extreme amount of love behind it and an extreme amount of belief that that person can do all the good works that were planned.
Mm.
You know, so
Yeah.
that's where I get my, thank you. That's where I get my inspiration from. It doesn't come from me because
Mm-hmm.
if I were to depend on my own self-esteem, I don't think I could make it. Like if I could just like go into the mirror and be like, I'm a great person. Like it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
So,
Mhm.
you've described the gap between what science can do and what capital flows toward as one of the most consequential problems in healthcare, right? That's a conviction that runs ahead of where most of the market is.
Yeah, yeah.
What does it feel like to build from that position ahead of where the capital and the mainstreamers are, while you're carrying the weight of what's actually possible?
That's a great question. Um, it feels good to be able to do that. And I think one of the reasons it feels so good is that I get to meet people who are at that intersection every day
Mm-hmm.
and who have the optimism and the intelligence to do all these things that they are promising to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we talked about it. I'm not, I have them right here and I wear glasses. I've worn them since I was 12. And as a science student, uh, if you can't read the board, you're gonna have a really hard time. At least back in my day, like we didn't have the the different types of electronics that they have now. Like you had a chalkboard, and every day at the end of class, somebody would clean the green chalkboard, and so it'd be fresh for the next day. But if you couldn't see, you wouldn't be able to understand a lot of the topics very well as they were being taught.
Mm-hmm.
But there was somebody way back when, before I was born, who figured out using the laws of physics that if he structured glass in a certain way or some plastics in a certain way, that we would be able to see better, and that he would be able to do this for each and every person independent of their problem, right? So when you look at this situation, it's like who would ever think that that was possible? Like you know what I mean? Like you think about
Yeah.
like what kind of a person believes that they can cure blindness
Right.
with a medical device? And I get to meet these people all the time.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
I feel very, very blessed.
So, not a, critical science trains you to be rigorous about uncertainty, right?
Sure.
So to be honest about what you don't know.
Mm.
And venture capital kind of requires making significant bets under exactly that same uncertainty.
Hmm.
So how do you hold both of those things at the same time? And when they pull in different direction, which one wins?
That's so interesting. I love that question. So I think that we all live in great uncertainty, but we don't know it. We have great expectations of what we're going to be able to do. Um, in 10 minutes, we might say, "Oh, I'm going to have my second cup of coffee," but we don't really know. It's very uncertain. We believe it, but we don't know it, right? So I think as a human being, I have reconciled with the fact that nothing is actually certain in the way that we think of certainty. So I don't battle with uncertainty as much. Of course, I have my days and times where I need to strengthen myself in the Lord, where I'm like, whoa, this is crazy,
Mm.
but I realize that I do not know what is ahead. I do not know what is going to happen for sure. I can make um, I can do educated due diligence. I won't call it a guess. I won't call it a guess. I mean, I think in the healthcare space, we're not called to be people who guess,
Mm.
but we are people to take all of the information that we currently have and build that into our systems to make that decision in an uncertain space.
Got it. Nadia, what what do you protect most fiercely as a leader right now? Not in terms of the portfolio or
Oh
the
my.
firm, but internally. What internal condition do you work hardest to maintain so that your own judgment stays clear?
Well, I I like to hear the thoughts of my team. I like my team members to tell me what's on their minds, respectfully, of course, and also share what's on their minds with other members of our team. Um, because I am fully aware, as I said earlier, I believe that life is uncertain by nature. That's like we don't know. That's why we need to have faith. Because we wouldn't call it faith if we knew what was around the next corner.
Mhm.
But that also goes in terms of if I have somebody who I've put in a leadership role, let them be a leader in that role. I think that's one of the things that I like.
I love that.
I've heard people say things to me like, "NanaYaa, I just saw this thing that somebody did on behalf of your one of your the organizations that you're running. It doesn't look like anything that you would have done." I said, "It isn't.
Mhm. Hmm.
It isn't. It's something that the person that I trust in leadership did that I okayed because yeah, they might have done it a little different. They might have taken a little bit of they might have taken a different road to get there,
Hmm.
but it is exactly fitting into what I would like to present to the world. And I would like to make sure that whoever is working with me is able to use their unique talents in a way that edifies them, that makes them feel, no, not feel, but know that they're valued and know that they don't have to be a carbon copy of me because I value their uniqueness and I need that. I mean,
Yeah, I love that.
yep, thank you. So I think that's what I guard most fiercely.
So,
allowing people who work with me to have the opportunity to be the leaders that that whatever opportunities I've given them to do it, that they're able to do it. I mean, of course, if it's veering out of the realm of of consequence for
solution,
the
right.
yes, I will gently bring them back.
Yeah, I like that. So you carry 20 years of political science, an MBA from Columbia,
Yes.
a VC firm, an accelerator, and a conviction about what healthcare needs. So that's a lot of identity to hold simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
When a decision requires you to choose between those versions of yourself, the scientist, the investor, the builder, the educator, how do you know which one to listen to?
Oh, I think that it would very much depend on what the question was, um, and what would be required to solve the problem. Um, in venture capital, there is a hierarchy where the managing partner, GP, will make the final decision. So in those kinds of situations, when there's limited funding and I have to choose between two different companies, I would have to put on the first hat as a VC and really look into the due diligence in a way that is inclusive of all the information I've gotten, but also unique to what I have learned over 20 years as an operator in the sciences
Hmm.
and in the hospital system. So that would be one case. Um, if it has to do with mentoring somebody and bringing out the best in them, and we are just talking about that a little earlier,
Mhm.
about how that actually looks, then I would put my mentor cap on,
Mhm.
right? And I would help them to see, I would help them to look into the mirror and whether whatever they're seeing is lining up with what they are believing the outcome should be in terms of what they are doing, we'd have to get to the bottom of that,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? So I think really it's just dependent on what the situation is. And sometimes the situations require both. Um, and then also there's one unique place that I am learning to be present in is when I don't say a word.
Mhm.
I'm learning not just like sometimes I don't need to answer that email because they can actually reflect on what they've written and reflect on what the answer should be.
Mhm.
And there's some wisdom in speaking and there's some wisdom in being quiet, you
Yeah,
know. So that's one other hat that I'm really
totally get that.
working on.
Yeah. So, looking back across the arc, Sloan-Kettering, Columbia, Purelite, the accelerator, what decision would you most want to revisit? Not to change it, just to understand it better.
Hmm. I think, wow, that is an interesting question. Um, I think that when I was working at Memorial Sloan-Kettering, towards the end of that time, I um I would have liked to talk to more people about what actually made them work in the field.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's what I think I would have done. I don't think, I mean, we were completely always busy, but we had lunch. We had lunchtime. And I think, being more interested in learning their stories about why cancer care, you know, why, because I was talking to an orthopedic surgeon and he said, an oncologic orthopedic surgeon, and he said that one of his family members had a certain cancer that took over their bones. And of course, it was stage 4. Once it goes into your bone, it's stage 4. And they were not able to make it. And that was why he became an orthopedic surgeon in the oncology space. And when you start to understand these things, first of all, the respect that you had for them, that was already there, just quadruples. And then the humanity of the people that you're working with just quadruples. And then there's just so much that that I feel that I missed when just being so busy. Just being so busy. I did learn some things about different people, and I have people that I still am in contact with, and we're texting even during the week. However, I think I would have spent more time there because the stories matter. And then the stories matter because I can invest based on these stories, these people who need help, as much help as I would need in their situations.
Yeah. So the founders you back are making some of the hardest decisions in healthcare, right? So building at the intersection of science, regulation, and capital, where the cost of getting it wrong is real, and it's
Yeah.
so. What have you learned about decision making from watching them up close that you didn't know when you were still inside the institution?
Ah, you know, in healthcare, there are very particular ways that you can move towards your goal. So if you would like to become a doctor, you first start out in high school doing, lots of science classes, AP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We won't go through the whole thing. And it's very challenging, it's very time consuming, but it's very, very structured. And with a founder, especially in the healthcare space, they have had this structure throughout their whole life. But now they're going into the rigmarole craziness of being a founder and wearing every hat, at least for a time period. Right? And so that being the case, what I have found is that for founders, there has to be that intersection of being in a space where you kind of feel like you know it all and you're the top of your game, to coming to a place where the level of humility has to raise because you are also in a new space. You're not only in a healthcare space, you are in a business space.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the place where I have found the most interesting with founders and brilliant minds because nobody has time to do everything. Right? What did they say? They say a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Right.
Right? So I don't need necessarily the innovator behind a technology to be everything, but I need that innovator to be intelligent enough to go and find somebody with an MBA to be on their business team, to go and find a great tax professional, to go and find all of the things that they're not studied in so that their business can grow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. So I think a founder needs to have that openness of mind. And also, hospitals are structured where doctors are at the top of the food chain for various reasons. And so a founder with great ideas and very illustrious career may find themselves in situations where they don't exactly know where their footing is off. And then they have to be able to know that there are people that can help them get back on that balance beam.
Got it. So if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the moment you decided to leave Sloan-Kettering, not about the career or the strategy, more like how to navigate what was coming internally, what would it be?
myself. You know what? This is going to be, this might be controversial to some people, but I would have prayed more. I would have prayed more, you know, and not only for myself. I think there's this um, interesting thing that when you come across problems or people who present problems, um, that we look at these people and we're very, very angry at what they've done and how they've behaved.
Mhm.
Um, but as I've gotten older, I've started to realize that there are various reasons why people do what they do based on what they think they can gain from those things. So some people make wrong decisions or hurtful decisions against others because they think they're going to gain something. And then when they get to that space, they find out that, yeah, maybe they got the money, but then they don't have that fullness that they thought they were going to have.
Mm.
Right? They have that, there's an emptiness with this kind of achievement. So I think back in the day, I would get angry at the way people would behave. I'd be like, oh, what is wrong with these people? Like, why? You know,
Mm.
But now as I've matured, I do understand what's wrong with those people. Same thing that's wrong with me. We are in this world and the world is just crazy. And
Right.
we're all trying to figure it out. And we're saying, like, how can I get the best out of this life? And people are just making the wrong decision. So I would forgive a lot quicker. I pray a lot more. Um, I think those would be the two things that I would have if I could go back in time.
Mhm.
Those would be the two things.
Well,
Forgive very quickly. But I'm also, forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things.
yes.
You don't have to step into the same problem because you've forgiven them.
Right.
You can make a different decision. Like, you're not going to let somebody slap you in the face twice. No.
Right.
But you can forgive them for the first slap and
For
make sure you don't put yourself in a slaps in
right.
a slaps way.
Forgiving isn't forgetting, right?
Yes.
So, so I have a last question for you.
Okay.
And it's kind of the one I ask every single guest. So, what's a question you think leaders in your position almost never get asked that you wish someone would ask?
Question. I think the question, okay, so this is the question. Is what you are doing really going to be impactful for the people you are presuming that you will serve? And I know it seems like a kind of rude question. Like, I think it's kind of a rude question because the person's already doing this thing and like you're asking them like, is this really something that you believe will help other people? And people tend not to ask that question. I guess some people might ask it in very confrontational ways and like different types
Mhm.
of platforms. Um, but in a way that sometimes when we are trying our best at something, we find that we're doing it because we want other people to think well of us.
Mhm.
Like we have the wrong reason behind it. There's no real kingdom purpose. There's no real like, am I helping somebody? There's this like, if I'm on this stage, somebody sees me, and then somebody erases every bit of a rejection that I've ever had. They can eat their heart out. You know what I mean? Like that kind of a thing, like your success is the best revenge and all these different things,
Mhm.
right? And so I think with a lot of people who are in positions of power, there's a drive to prove people wrong and a drive to like and this probably will date me, but I used to, the Duracell man used to put a battery on his shoulder. And he'd be like, I dare you, knock this battery off my shoulder, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, somebody saying like, yeah, okay, like I'll knock my own chip off my shoulder at this point. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it's great when people say like, but yeah, like you of course you should benefit from the things that you do too. I mean, there's no reason why you can't enjoy your life and you can't enjoy what you do. And it like there's some part of it that has to be edifying for you. And there's some part of it that has to like preserve your standard of living so that you can, come to work every day, eat well, rest well, do all the things that a human being should have the right to do. But I think that's the biggest thing. Are we doing this so that people will know that we are
Mm-hmm.
awesome, or are we doing this because there's real conviction behind it? Um,
Yeah, I think that's a very important question to ask. Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't like somebody to really ask me that question, because it kind of comes off confrontational, but I've thought about it in my own spirit.
Absolutely. So have I.
Yeah.
So, NanaYaa, this has been exactly the kind of conversation in the inquiry is built for. So, I want to thank you for being willing to sit inside these questions with me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Terry. This is above and beyond what I could have asked for. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. To the audience in general, I appreciate your participation. In the meantime, stay in the inquiry.